Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller. My co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. Pocono is in the books. Denny Hamlin gets his 7th career win at the track officially. Second year in a row that he's crossed the finish line first. This one counts, though. It stayed after inspection. Tyler Reddick comes up second. Martin Truex Jr. third. All Toyotas. We had 5 Toyotas in the top 6. Harvick came away with a top 4 finish in 4th. Ty Gibbs gets a career-best 5th place finish, and Christopher Bell winds up 6th. But that's not exactly what we're all talking about now. This was one of the most controversial races we've had in a while, and honestly, we've had a lot of controversy this season in NASCAR. This involving Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson once again, just like back in Kansas, a very similar scenario. Denny Hamlin ends up in victory lane. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but first, we're going to talk about what happened at Pocono outside of the controversy and outside of the finish. 81.1% of people responding to Jeff Gluck's poll said that was a good race. I 100% agree. I know some people think Pocono races are boring. They don't like the strategy behind it. They don't like all the different fuel strategies, all the different tire strategies and everything else. That was a great race. I don't care what you say. There's a reason that we actually saw an increase in viewership and from last year at Pocono. Not to mention this was the highest rated or highest viewed NASCAR race on cable this year. This was a great race through and through. There was drama, there was great racing, and then there was an awesome finish. You can't ask for much more when it comes to a race, especially at a race track like Pocono, like that has a history of sometimes getting boring races. The fact of the matter is Denny Hamlin's in victory lane. He grabs his 2nd win of the year. Daniel Suarez wrecks out, has an awful points day when he's on the bubble. Joey Logano has issues after being dominant early, wins the first stage, but then wrecks. All 4 tires are flat. He can't move. He has to get towed back. Tow truck completely destroys the truck. We had Austin Dillon get into it or come down on Tyler Reddick and then think it was for some reason Tyler Reddick's fault, throws his helmet at Tyler Reddick, all pissed off. We had Justin Haley announce last week that he's going to Rick Ware Racing out of nowhere. This entire last week, we had drama between Ryan Preece and Corey LaJoie. This was a crazy race. Denny Hamlin wins. Nick, what do you think?
Dude, that was, I love Pocono. And then when we get that kind of a Pocono, it was so awesome. I loved it. There was a hell of a lot going on in that race. You mentioned it all. And you said a great finish. I guess we could contend, and we'll talk about it, but contend at least in the last, lap and a third, whether it was a great finish or not. But by and large, the last several laps were awesome. There was drama about if guys were going to run out of fuel or not. If we got an extra green-white checkers, which always happens at Pocono. People always try to pit as soon as possible on that last stint, because if the caution comes out, they stay on the lead lap, and then others who didn't pit under yellow and have to go to the rear of the field. So there's always that factor. So fuel mileage is almost always going to be a factor at Pocono just because of that. And then you add in all the crazy stuff that happened. Really good race. I think there were restarts there at the end that we could talk about. There was drama on pit road at the end that we could talk about. I know we will, but I'm just really excited that people finally got to see a great Pocono race. And you mentioned the increased viewership. IndyCar also had increased viewership. They had one of their highest ratings. They had like a massive, I think it was something like a 30% jump over last year for the doubleheader at Iowa. So for whatever reason, motorsports was in the limelight this weekend, and both series, NASCAR, IndyCar, performed. You mentioned Denny Hamlin's 7th win at Pocono for the 11 car. Kyle Kirkwood finished 7 and 11. So I'm hitting up 7-11 a whole bunch this week with two of my favorite drivers, doing the old 7-11.
Yeah. Like you said, Denny Hamlin's one of your favorite drivers, and his 7th win at Pocono, which is absolutely ridiculous, his history at this track. He went into the race as the favorite from sports books. He didn't dominate by any means, but he ended up in victory lane. Got a lot of boos after the race. A lot of middle fingers, a lot of boos. Like I said, we're going to get to that.
Some of that probably was for NASCAR. Some of that probably was for NASCAR as well.
That's true.
I know a lot of it was for Denny, but I'm sure a lot of it was for NASCAR as well.
Yeah. Like I said, though, like guys like Christopher Bell, spun mid-race, ended up rebounding for a top, 6 finish, ended up 6. Ty Gibbs, he made his Cup Series debut start at Pocono last year, ended up top 5. He had a great race. He actually had one of the top, I think he was like 4th in driver rating. He had a great race going. And then Harvick, I thought he was going to get screwed there with that penalty, or not that penalty, but with that caution flag again. Him, Larson, and was it Austin Dillon? They were on that alternate strategy of, if it went green, they'd be in the catbird seat to end the race.
Yeah.
Harvick got stuck back in traffic when that final caution came out. He ended up rebounding for a 4th place finish, which I was very glad to see, because if you follow my bets, you know that my initial bet of the week, I just slammed Kevin Harvick top 10 because it was at -111 on Tipico Sportsbook.
I bet it before you did, and then you were even able to get it at an even better number. But we both absolutely slammed the shit out of it. Harvick now under with Stewart Haas Racing, I should say. At Pocono and Indy, the 2.5 mile flat tracks, is now 21 for 25 in getting a top 10. And he was nearly even money, like minus 111 is like 52.5% he needs to do that. And he's 21 for 25. Absolutely insane. Also, shout outs to, I found that one on my own, and you did too. But then shout outs to Greg Mathern for pointing out the AJ Allmendinger versus Austin Dillon bet. Yes. I wasn't even close. And we got Dinger at plus 140. So I slammed both Harvick and Dinger for 2 units each. My model had Dinger as a pretty clear favorite in that matchup. Just solid on those bets. Unfortunately, none of my longer shots came through. I still felt pretty good about them. So losing week for me, but at least I didn't get shut out like I did 2 weeks in a row leading into Pocono. But honestly, I feel very happy with my bets. Tyler Reddick almost won that race. He very well could have won the race had it stayed green, or had they not stayed green, but potentially had it stayed green because they threw the caution as they came back around to Priest. Like, who knows if he could have caught him on that last lap, or if they had thrown a caution when Priest actually stalled, if he would have gotten him on the green-white checkered there. So it would have been very interesting to see. Hamlin was certainly among those that I think had to conserve some fuel should there have been a green-white checkered or two. And so I think Tyler Reddick would have been in the catbird seat there. But bets aside, a clear head on that. It's definitely a controversial finish, so we'll talk more about that. But yeah, shout outs to Ty Gibbs, his first career top 5 coming on the 1-year anniversary of his Cup Series debut. Couple other things. I thought that, you live bet Kyle Larson, and right when you live bet him, I mean, it had to be within a minute, Christopher Bell wrecks and absolutely screws you. But for whatever reason, they played the absolutely most insane, perfect strategy, and Kyle Larson actually got out in front. Now, it's very hard to pass at Pocono, so just getting that track position was monstrous. Obviously, those restarts at the end certainly didn't favor him, but if it had stayed green, he probably would have won, despite the fact that the caution literally was at the worst possible time for him. I could not believe it, and yet somehow, who's his crew chief? Cliff Daniels? Somehow just pulls off the exact perfect strategy to get him out front. I think they said he was going into that final stint, he was like 12th or 13th or 11th or something, and he comes out the lead after that cycle of pit stops. Unbelievable. Yeah,
it was. I remember I DM'd you when those live odds were up, because I think Larson was at 16 or 14, and I'm like, am I like? Because I wasn't like fully watching. I was at a bar. I was with a friend, and I was in my head. I'm thinking, okay, all Larson needs is this race to go green, and he's winning. And I'm like, why is he sitting at 16-1? This makes no sense. So after it sat there for a little bit, it got down to I think 12 or 11-1, whatever I hit it at. But yeah, that made no sense. And then soon after that is when Sportsbooks just completely took everything off of the board, because I don't think they knew how to factor in strategy for this race, because there were so many alternate strategies going on that they couldn't make odds correctly. Like Larson, after his spin and little bit of damage, there was no reason that he should have been as long as he was. I'm glad that he was. Obviously I didn't win that bet, but it was interesting to see that. Speaking of bets, like you said, Christopher Bell almost ruined the Larson live bet for me. I was also heavy on Christopher Bell, minus 107 for a top 10. I had Eric Jones top 10 at plus 650. I had Stenhouse top 10 at plus 715. That was a fun weekend for me when it comes because, like, obviously you always caution against, betting too many top 10 bets. I had 4 of them out there. All 4 of them hit. And that was just awesome because I have a little group chat going with a couple of my friends, and I always just say, like, hey, sprinkle some money on this. Like, for example, for Richmond this weekend, Stenhouse opened at 500 to 1 on Sportsbook. So I'm like, or Superbook, and I was like, put $1 or $2 on this. It's worth it as fast as Stenhouse was here before. But always fun weekends when bets like that hit. Other guys, like I said, Stenhouse, Jones both finished top 10. Harrison Burton came away with an 8th place finish. Didn't have an 8th place car. Ended up there because of the strategy. Another guy, our boy Todd Gilliland, finished top 15 again. Just somehow squeaking in these great finishes. He started dead last after having qualifying issues. Ended up top 15. I honestly don't know. Corey LaJoie had a really fast car in practice and in qualifying. He qualified 12th. I don't remember exactly what happened. I know him and Ryan Preece got into it. Something happened where Preece got all pissed off again. I don't know about you, Nick, but I cannot stand Ryan Preece, and I cannot stand people that defend Ryan Preece. The guy's not good. I understand that Stewart Haas Racing isn't good, but Ryan Preece is not good, and people need to understand this. He's not good. So
the problem is neither is Cole Custer. They both suck.
Yeah. And I saw someone tweet out today like all the bad luck that Ryan Preece has had this year, and one of them was it said BS speeding penalty at one of the tracks. And I'm like, so his own mistake is bullshit? Like, that's on him. That's not. They didn't calculate his speed wrong. It's on him. He sped. Like, he's just a dumbass. Like, and these little temper tantrums that he's throwing these, because he got into it with McDowell last week at where were they last week? I'm blanking.
That's a good question.
New Hampshire. He got into it with McDowell at New Hampshire, and now he's getting into it with LaJoie. Like, congratulations, you're fighting guys because you two are fighting for 25th place on the track. Like, Ryan Preece just needs to go away. Like, I wanted to root for him earlier in the year. I'm not there. But like I said, though, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. gets another top 10 this year. Harrison Burton gets another top 10. Eric Jones gets a career high. He now has 8 top 10s at Pocono, which is just like,
yeah.
We used to talk about Eric Jones. He's very good at Darlington. You can now throw Pocono in there because 12 starts, 5 top 5s, 8 top 10s, 2 top 10s now with Petty / Legacy Motor Club.
Here's the
awesome
thing that frustrates me. I had top 10 bets, obviously, on Harvick, and my other 2 were 8-1 bets on Michael McDowell and Austin Cindric. I stand behind those bets. Still think they were good bets, especially considering Cindric qualified in the top 10. Michael McDowell ran close to the top 12 or 13 most of the race until the end there. We had some terrible strategy. So felt very good about those. But I also showed value on Jones and Stenhouse top 10, just like Jim Sonis of Number Fire FanDuel did, my good buddy Jim. We both showed value on Stenhouse and Jones, but since I'd already bet 3 top 10s, I didn't want to dilute them any further.
Right.
Should have just bet them because I was showing value on them. So a little frustrated with myself there, but I feel good about my bets. Like I bet Blaney 16-1 to win. He was in the lead when his car fucking just shit the bed. Like, nothing he could do. Electrical issues. Reddick almost won 16-1. I think I had maybe one other outright. I had Almirola 200 to 1. I remember that, which not very good. Almirola was garbage there. And then I followed you with Christopher Bell on 25 to 1 right before the race started, and I still like that bet as well. So I feel great about my bets at Pocono. Obviously, it didn't work out, but at least A, we didn't get shut out for my side of things, and B, it was only a small loss, but I feel confident that I didn't make any mistakes this past weekend in terms of the bets I did made. I think the only mistake I made was not betting Jones and Stenhouse top 10, given that both Jim and I were showing value on that. And when we get into Richmond for analysis this week, there's one bet that both Jim and I are definitely showing value on, so I'll probably have to bet that.
Yeah, I'm. We'll get to Richmond later in this episode, but opening odds came out, and there were some values out there. There's probably still some values there. Odds are kind of all over the place. I like it. But the thing about Richmond though is, like, we know who's going to be good there. But as you said, you're happy with your process. You're not going to whine about yourself this weekend, but we got some stuff to whine about from Pocono. So that's going to get us right into whine about it here from Pocono Raceway. And you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Well, I started last week. You go this time.
Okay. I know what you're going to whine about, and we're both going to whine about it. So I'm going to, obviously this race ended pretty controversially. Was there contact? Was there not? Versus Denny Hamlin versus Kyle Larson. Obviously Larson's pissed. Like, you could tell in his post-race interview, he's very mad. Obviously those two are friends off the track. But basically Larson said, if you're not going to race me with any respect, I'm going to change the way that I race you now. And I'm pretty sure Larson pretty much said, like, I need to earn that respect back. And, the way that he's losing races this year, and he could easily have seven wins right now through the first 22 races or 21 races. Like, that's how good that team has been. They're getting in bad positions. He's getting shit happen to him. I understand Larson's frustration. At the same time, and we talked about this before we first started recording this, I've watched that replay probably 50 times. I don't want to defend Denny Hamlin here, because I think if you hit somebody, if you're aggressive like that you need to own it, and you need to say, yes, I did that. I cannot see where there's a huge amount of contact, if any. I understand Denny's getting a ton of heat right now. A lot of people hate him. Truex, his own teammate, said that it was a dirty move. Was it a dirty move, or was it necessary in this car? Do you need to do this with this car? Or else, like Hamlin would have no chance of winning if he didn't run his line. But at the same time, he ran his line, and he did not make significant contact into Larson to put him into the wall. So my whine about it is going to be about people that are sitting here. Like, as I said, though, like, I'm going to sound a little contradictory here. But people that come out here and say Denny Hamlin needs to own it, and say that he wrecked him and he put Larson into the wall and that's why he won and it was dirty, blah, blah, blah. Like, even his teammate says it. Here's the thing. One, yes, if you flat out wreck somebody, I think you should own it. But I'm going to say this. NASCAR has set the precedent. Denny Hamlin can't say anything. We've seen that back at Phoenix when he said, yeah, I got Chastain back. I just went up and hit him. And what happened? He got penalized. That'll never happen again. Denny Hamlin will never... I understand, like, Kyle Petty went on and said Denny Hamlin's never wrong. It looks like that, yes, but Denny Hamlin can't. Because even if he just briefly says, yes, I hit him, and NASCAR somehow takes that as, I purposely hit him and that's why I won, who's to say that they're not going to strip that win from Hamlin? He can't afford to say that he did anything there. All he can do is deny it and look like a bad guy in public, because NASCAR then can't do anything to him, because they can't prove that he purposely went up and hit Larson and put him into the wall. So the people saying that he should own it, he should be a man, yes, I get that side, but at the same point, you need to realize that he can't, and this is 100% NASCAR's fault, because they don't let the drivers actually talk about what actually happens on the racetrack. It's just like like the olden times of an older father in a family not wanting any negative view, anyone to view negatively on the family, so everything's all hunky-dory when you go out in public. When behind closed doors, it's a shit show. This is what it is for NASCAR. NASCAR for some reason, wants to maintain that public image, and that also comes full circle as to why they can't market this sport correctly, and it's not going to grow, because they don't have the balls to sit here and say Hamlin put Larson into the wall, and then create a feud, because that's exactly what they need. That's exactly what they needed with everything that happened with Chastain. You market this stuff. You latch onto this stuff. It's just like what they did with, go back to when Dale Earnhardt was racing. They latched onto the Intimidator thing, and they made it his persona. You have to do that with these drivers. I said for years, I think that these drivers are cardboard cutouts. I'm going to sit here and say I think I'm wrong. I think a ton of these drivers have the personality that they need to grow this sport, to make these guys stars. NASCAR refuses to do it because they want to keep up their image. And that's where I'm at on it.
I agree with you.
By the way, I'm opening my wine now. I forgot before I started this. I'm drinking the Passion Strawberry Lemonade. I've already reviewed it. It's amazing.
I was literally just talking to my girlfriend about that one. I need to get that one, so I can't wait. You have to let us know.
It's so good. It's so good.
But to your point, okay, so Denny Hamlin got his his points fine or whatever, and all that stuff, monetary fine, because he admitted to the deal with Chastain. And then what did we see? We saw NASCAR do that a couple other times in either Xfinity or trucks. And one of those became because of radio communication. Well, guess what happened when Hamlin and Larson had their incident? The radio communication was Hamlin and Hamlin's crew chief shit-talking Larson because they had to go the opposite direction. They couldn't, even on the radio, couldn't be like, oh, yeah, I got into him or whatever. So they had to essentially intentionally assign blame to Larson just because, they have to cover their ass at this point. That's just the precedent NASCAR has set. So it's one of those things where Hamlin he has to race hard. He's going for the win. A win is important. He raced Larson no different than he raced Chastain last year. And none of us had a problem with that. I don't have a problem with how he raced Larson. I don't. You're racing hard for the win, maybe a little tiny door-to-door contact. There's nothing wrong with that. If you put the guy on the wall, and he'll get you back later. There's still nothing wrong with it, as long as you're not, slamming a dude into the fence. And what I could say Denny Hamlin made an air quote mistake without actually being in the wrong. That's just hard racing. Mm-hmm. I think there's a difference between making a mistake or getting into a guy, and I don't even know if he did. Like you said, I watched the replay 50 times as well. I could say there's a difference between maybe he, took a little too much space, or whatever, but also morally wasn't in the wrong, right? Because that's just hard racing for the win. And Larson was just also kind of put himself in that spot, was in that spot. He had every opportunity to change the way that turned out as well, just like Ross did last year. So it's one of those things, though, as far as the Hamlin, can he admit it or whatever, I think he admitted as much as he could. He had to race Larson hard for the win, and that's all he could say.
And, here's the thing. It's not like Hamlin forced Larson up there. That was Larson's line. It's not like he bumped him out of his line. That was Larson's line. If Larson was making the rest of that turn, that contact did not put Larson into the wall. Larson's line put him into the wall. And honestly, kudos to Hamlin for shoving Larson, not shoving Larson, but put him in that position to get there. But you go back to the previous caution when Bowman spun out, running in fourth. Again, Hamlin was right there. All he did was change the air. He didn't bump Bowman out of the way. We're not sitting there saying that he wrecked Bowman. No. Obviously, this is a little different. But I feel like if you listen to this podcast for very long, you know that I wasn't a Denny Hamlin fan. I kind of turned into a Denny Hamlin fan. Now I like him because of how outspoken he is. I was questioning, whether I wanted to get back on the hate Denny Hamlin train before we record, or for the past couple of days. There are so many people hating on Denny Hamlin that I think it's now become it's like a Chastain. It's now fun to hate Denny Hamlin. It's like it was fun to hate Kyle Busch the last 10 years. Now all of a sudden Kyle Busch is kind of like, he's getting cheers. We need a new villain. We have a new villain in Denny Hamlin along with Ross Chastain. It's good for the sport. I don't think Hamlin did anything wrong, and neither does NASCAR because, nothing's came out.
Yep. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Just very, very interesting ending, I will say, to that race as far as that moment between Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. But my whine about it is also about the ending, and I think a lot of people have their opinions on this ending, but to me, that was a bogus decision by NASCAR. So my whine about it is NASCAR not throwing the yellow when there is a car dead stick on the track, not moving. Not just not moving, but not moving for 5, 10, 15 seconds before they even cross the start-finish line. There is no hope of that dude restarting his car before the field comes around. You know it. You know you're going to be throwing the yellow anyway. Why aren't you throwing the yellow right away? It makes no sense. And it's a terrible decision. And people will say, oh, you won or lost your bets or what. I'm a Denny Hamlin fan, right? He won the race because of that NASCAR decision, potentially. Because there were two ways he could have lost it if they just let him finish that whole last lap and Reddick passed him, or if green-white checkered, Reddick has the potentially, or somebody else has the potential to pass him. I'm a Denny Hamlin fan. Yeah, I had a bet on Reddick, but it didn't matter. I think I've been very clear over the course of the time we've been doing this podcast that I have no problem saying NASCAR did something right if it negatively affects my bet, or NASCAR did something wrong if it positively affects my bet, right? Like, that's not an issue. The issue was NASCAR waited a solid 15 seconds just for them to reach the start-finish line, and then another 15 seconds until they came around turns 1 and 2 to throw the yellow. It's the same deal with the tire at Kansas that got stuck in the infield that one time. If you're going to throw the yellow 30 laps later to retrieve the tire? If it was a safety issue 30 laps later, why wasn't it a safety issue when it first happened? So that, for me, it's just inexcusable by NASCAR. And part of the reason the fans were booing is because they knew NASCAR needed to throw the yellow to ensure a competitive finish, a fair competitive finish. And instead, they didn't. And you and I have been quick. We've criticized NASCAR plenty of times for too quick on the yellow trigger there. So maybe there's some of that, but they had 15 seconds to make that decision at least, and they got it wrong. 15 seconds is a ton of time in racing. Everybody sitting at home, they're showing a replay, they're cutting back. Like, we all had time to say, throw the yellow 10 times over. And they never did. So it was just, I don't understand it.
The only thing that you and I have asked for when it comes to these cautions, these late cautions, is consistency. And that's just not what we're getting. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. And as far as I'm concerned, I like every one of these, quick trigger cautions late in the race, or now this no caution. To me, this is race manipulation, 100%. Because you're not being consistent. There should have been another restart. We saw all weekend, anybody that spun could not get going. Nobody that spun got going immediately. You knew that, who was it that even spun? Preece? I think it was Preece that spun.
I think that's what caused the whole tempers.
Yeah, because probably off of LaJoie. We knew that he wasn't getting going. As soon as he spun, I'm like, he's not going to get going. There's no chance. Just like Logano, he wasn't going to get going. Like, it's so for everybody that spun throughout the entire weekend to never get going, and then NASCAR to sit there with the race on the line and not throw a caution before they got to the white flag. It's race manipulation, in my opinion, because you knew you could say, not certainly, but almost without a shadow of a doubt that he was not going to get going, and you were going to need to throw a caution because you can't just let these cars come around at 200 miles an hour, at a car that's stopped on the track. Not to mention, what does Preece have to do? Like, what's his incentive to get going, even if he does? Because when he did get going, he wasn't going like normal speed to get off the track. Like, hey, they're coming around at 180 miles an hour. He was just lollygagging around.
Exactly.
So, it's I don't understand it. I don't understand why more people like. I understand the whole Hamlin Larson thing is taking precedence for people talking, but this is just another example of NASCAR officiating being absolute shit. And I don't know. Like, we're probably going to see something like this in the playoffs. And the fact that something like that can determine a championship, when people don't like comparing NASCAR to other sports, but we see in football where, like NFL, one bad call by the refs can have a major impact on the entire game and the outcome of the game, and it's exactly what we see with NASCAR too.
Now, see, here's the thing. If they had a second before the start-finish line, or 2 or 3 seconds, I wouldn't have an issue because it takes a little bit to determine that. Because even though we know none of those cars got restarted all weekend, we still need a second or two to determine, is he completely stopped? Has he not kept it fired? But once it's been there for 5, 10, 15 seconds, you got to throw it. And to your point about race manipulation, or let's say this happened in the championship race. Let's pretend Phoenix was in the championship race, or even maybe they had just crossed the start finish line and had to come back around for another 20 seconds or 15 seconds. I would rather they throw the caution early, simply so that the drivers could race it out for the championship, rather than it being, well, Denny's got a 2-second lead or a half-second lead or whatever, and it's going to be really hard to pass. There was no opportunity to race it out for the lead. Even if they had run the full last lap, that would have been a chance to race it out. Now, obviously, they can't because, like you said, you don't want them barreling down at Ryan Preece at 150 miles an hour or whatever. But at least it gives them the chance to race it out for the championship, or race it out, in this case, for the race win. And speaking of, I got another little side whine about it. Speaking of barreling down at Ryan Preece at 150, 200 miles an hour, I saw a tweet about gimmicks in NASCAR, and I quote tweeted it. You may have seen it.
Oh, yeah.
I said the lucky dog is not a gimmick. The lucky dog is literally capturing NASCAR tradition. Because you know what? We used to race to the start-finish line. We would have barreled by Ryan Preece. I guess had the caution been called when it was after the start-finish line, we would have barreled past Ryan Preece racing to the end. And back in the day, had it not been the last lap, let's say it was middle of the race when that happened, traditionally the leader would back off and allow people that are lapped to unlap themselves without letting second or third place. And in second or third place would typically back off, gentleman's agreement. So the lucky dog is not a gimmick. It is literally upholding tradition that we had to throw away in the name of safety. And I'm glad we do, because 2003, New Hampshire, Dale Jarrett spins, Casey Mears is barreling down on him, barely misses him. That could have been an absolute disaster. And we've just seen 2 deaths at New Hampshire in the past 3 years with Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin hitting the wall on their stuck throttles. Now, this would obviously not a stuck throttle situation, but you can't have that. So NASCAR rightly decided, okay, we're no longer going to race back to the line, but as a concession to years and years and decades of tradition, we're going to allow one car to get their lap back. So anybody that, and I saw a few people in my mentions like, no, it's still a gimmick, and they don't even know their reasoning. They don't know their NASCAR history. They don't know their reasoning. People are saying, oh, it's a gimmick by NASCAR for competition. No, it's not. It's literally just upholding a many decades of tradition in the name of safety. And I think that's the right decision. The lucky dog is not a gimmick. Sorry.
Not to mention, we've seen it create competition on the track, racing for the lucky dog, or racing to be the first car lap down. The only thing gimmicky about the lucky dog is the name. That's why people hate it, because they call it the lucky dog.
And that's why people call it the free pass instead, because it's more descriptive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Mike Joy. I think Mike Joy, he's gotten terrible over the last couple of years, but he's always called it the free pass instead of the lucky dog. Other than I think there was a contracted period where it was the Aaron's lucky dog and he had to call it that. He's always called it the free pass. So I think that's a conscious decision to be more descriptive about what it is. You get a free pass around the track if you're the first car a lap down. But you're right. The only gimmicky thing is the name, and I think that actually came from Benny Parsons. Was the first to use it in 2003 after it was implemented. Benny Parsons called it a lucky dog, and it kind of, the lingo stayed around. But the free pass is definitely a better name for it. I think that's what I prefer. Some people call it the lucky dog. I prefer the free pass, but the thing in the graphic that I quote tweeted was listed as lucky dogs. That's why I'm just saying that. But it's not a gimmick. It is legitimately a good decision by NASCAR to uphold tradition in the name of safety, and that's the best approximation for what they used to do.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that call it the gimmick, they're the ones that enjoy the wrecks, so they don't give 2 shits about safety. They want to see unsafe situations. But that's going to wrap up Wine About It this week. As usual, presented by RotoBaller Winery. Like I said, it's passion strawberry lemonade. It's amazing. It has some carbonation in it.
Can't wait
but
to try it.
out all their flavors. Yeah, Nick still needs to try it. Try out all their flavors. They have a bunch of great wines. My favorite, still, Purple Rain. Can't go wrong there. Nick's, the bourbon barrel-aged Merlot. One of his favorite wines ever. But yeah, check them out. As always, I'll put the link in the description. I will and tweet it out. And make sure you check them out. You can get them shipped directly to your door. You can find them in stores. Passion brands, Purple Rain, Reds. They have quite a few wines, so make sure you check them out. But that's going to get us into the standings. Let's take a look.
We have a lot to talk about this week. We have a lot to talk about the standings.
This is getting interesting. So Daniel Suarez got wrecked at Pocono, and that had some major playoff implications. And you could tell on his radio, he did not want to. He was leaking oil. He was leaking water. He did not want to stop because he knew how big that was. Daniel Suarez is now behind the cut line by 23 points behind Michael McDowell. 18th in points for Suarez. A.J. Allmendinger is 17 points behind Michael McDowell in the playoff standings. Bubba Wallace is now a solid 10 points ahead of the cut line. Stenhouse is good, and then Buescher, Keselowski, and Harvick are all solidly inside the playoffs. It's going to take major collapses from them to not make it, and or several different winners over these next 5 races. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 races before the playoff cut line. But currently, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell in, A.J. Allmendinger, Daniel Suarez, Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott out. Chase Elliott is now, from the cut line, 56 points. He ended up with an 11th place finish at Pocono. Did he get any stage points?
Chase Elliott?
No. But still, 56 points over 5 races. Now we're looking at 11 points gained per race over someone like Michael McDowell, who's finishing about teens every week. As you said, as soon as this started, this is getting less and less likely that Chase Elliott's going to point his way into the playoffs. I thought it was possible. It's not looking possible. Alex Bowman looks like he can miss it. This is going to get interesting because you know what this brings to the table for guys like Alex Bowman, for guys like Chase Elliott, Ty Gibbs, anyone that's not locked in now. I could see Bubba Wallace points racing. I could see Michael McDowell maybe points racing, but at the same time, I could see all these guys taking massive risks on race day to win the race and get into the playoffs, especially Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott.
It's interesting. I was thinking about that. A.J. Allmendinger, we've got 2 road courses.
Oh, we do.
Does he points race or does he race for the win? Because, like you said, he's only 13 points off the cut line. Does he point race or does he go for the win? What strategy do you use in those 2 races? This is going to be absolutely insane. Chase Elliott's a great road course racer. Daniel Suarez is a very good road course racer. But also 16th place Michael McDowell, great road course racer. This is going to get bonkers. And then you mentioned Chase Elliott is, 56 points off the cut line to Michael McDowell. He actually lost ground because Bubba Wallace was 16th last week, but had a very solid day, good finish, 11th place finish, which was behind Chase Elliott, but he did get stage points and skipped over Michael McDowell. So even though Chase Elliott gained points on Michael McDowell, he lost points to the cut line. Now Chase Elliott, by being 56 points down with 5 races left, is more than 11 points per race out of getting in. And if you remember when we talked, when he needed 8.5, let's say 8.4, 8.6, I forget what the exact number was, points per race. And then this past week he needed just over 10 points per race. Now he needs over 11 points per race. He's slipping the wrong way here. He's not going to point his way in. Chase Elliott has to win. He has to win. Alex Bowman probably has to win because he's only 10 points closer than Chase Elliott is. So he, instead of being 56 points out, he's 46 points out. So he's like 9 and change. Ty Gibbs, a little bit closer, right? Like he's only 28 points out. That's pretty doable over 5 races if Ty Gibbs can perform at a higher level than he's performed in his career. And we are seeing him sometimes performing better. He needs to turn it up. He needs to have close to a career set of weeks here, but he probably can point his way in. I shouldn't say probably. He can point his way in. I don't think it's likely, but he can. It's much more realistic for Daniel Suarez, A.J. Allmendinger, I think, to point their way in over a Michael McDowell or a Bubba Wallace, because there's every chance in the world one of those two stumbles. It's just going to be insane. And then you add in Daytona, right? Road courses. It could get wild on who could make it in, not make it in. Is the cut line going to shift, right? If the cut line shifts upward, makes it even harder for Elliott, Bowman, Gibbs to point their way in. So I think if you're Ty Gibbs or below, and especially if you're Alex Bowman or below, you probably got to think about winning.
And you got to do whatever you can to put yourself in a position to win, because honestly, Alex Bowman right now, he doesn't have the speed to win. He doesn't have the raw speed to win. He can't points race. He needs to win. But you brought up these two road courses. So we got Richmond this week, go to Michigan next week, then Indy Road Course, which A.J. Allmendinger won 2 years ago, and then Watkins Glen, who he finished second at last year. A.J. Allmendinger could be the spoiler here, but honestly, when it comes to the point situation now, I kind of want to see it go into Daytona like it is. All of these guys super close right on the cut line, and it all coming down to Daytona, and maybe one of them can win, but they're all points racing, and it's Daytona, and it's a shit show, and that's what I'm rooting for. As much as I like seeing different winners, I hope we don't get any different winners the next 4 races, and I hope we go into Daytona points like they are, and that is one time that I will support points as they run the entire race. The entire race, put it on that fucking screen.
And then you have guys like Austin Cindric on back who could win that race and get their way in to really throw things off. So you've got points as they run, but you also have Cindric, Haley Gillen, Almirola, LaJoy, Priest, Jones, Burton, Austin Dillon, Chase Briscoe, Ty Dillon, Noah Gragson. Hell, BJ McLeod, why not? Well, no, I guess he didn't do every race, so no. But all the way through Noah Gragson could win their way in, which would be absolutely insane.
I'm telling you, like, as much as people hate the playoffs and everything that comes with them, last year was exciting. This year's looking to be as equally exciting when it comes to these
more,
points
because
standing.
last year we only had that Blaney versus Truex thing and then another winner. And don't get me wrong, that was exciting as hell.
Yeah.
But this is another level of exciting.
And the biggest thing this year is because Bowman and Elliott both missed so much time, and they don't have wins. And so now you have two elite drivers. Well, Chase Elliott's elite. Alex Bowman's not elite. I don't want to throw that word out.
He's on the upper tier, like upper middle tier at worst.
Bowman is very good.
He's not 28th at least.
He's not 28th. Yeah. But this is, and that's just adding another aspect to it. But points currently, looking up top, getting away from this little bubble for a second. Martin Truex Jr. now has a 30-point lead on William Byron. Over the next 5 races, what do you think? So it goes Truex right now with 711 points. William Byron has 681, and then Hamlin's way back with 656. It's going to come down to Byron and Truex, I think, for this regular season championship. Do you see Truex losing it at this point? Obviously, Byron's had speed all year, but Truex, very good at Richmond, pretty good at Michigan. We know he can get it done at road courses, at least the top 10 finish. Byron's a little iffy on road courses, and then Daytona, Truex sucks at Daytona. That might be where he loses it, is Daytona.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing, and funny enough, Truex had a good finish at Daytona last year, even with a broken car, simply because everybody else wrecked in that rain wreck, and he didn't. But here's the thing. Truex is favored not only because he has a 30-point lead, but he gets the nod at Richmond over Byron, I think, by a little bit. Byron gets the nod over him at Michigan by a little bit. The road courses are probably pretty even. Last year we would have said Byron just because Toyota was out to lunch, but Truex has been strong at the road courses this year. Of course, so has Byron. Byron's not a bad road course racer. So it kind of may be a toss-up there, And then I think Daytona, maybe a slight nod to Byron. Maybe you want to give a slight nod to Truex on the road courses. So it's a toss-up, but that means if it's a toss-up in terms of like the nod over the next 5 races and Byron's 30 points behind, then the expectation is probably Byron ends up around 30 points behind. So Truex is a pretty solid favorite to win the regular season points title right now. It would take, certainly some bad results from him and some good results from Byron. I guess Denny Hamlin maybe could go on fire as well. It's possible, I guess, but I would say Truex is probably a pretty hefty favorite to take the regular season points crown. But certainly when I say hefty favorite, I mean maybe 60-65%, somewhere in like minus 150 range. I would put it maybe minus 160.
Mm-hmm. And, currently standings as they are, Truex and Byron are going to enter the playoffs. Truex, if it ended now, Truex starts with 33 points, Byron starts with 32. Those are some that's a huge advantage here this year, especially when you look at, Hamlin's going to start with 22. Everyone else, Kyle Busch would have 22, but everyone else is in the teens or lower. Mm-hmm. So those 30 points, it's going to be really big for them come playoff time, and what they're going to do. With Larson having such a volatile season, hero or zero. Currently, if playoffs started now, he'd only start with 17. So he'd start with basically half the points of Truex and Byron, which is a little crazy to think about. But yeah, other than that, like I said, this bubble is going to be interesting. I think it's awesome that Michael McDowell's currently in on points. That's fun to see. But Allmendinger, Suarez, Gibbs, Bowman, Elliott, all racing their way in. Man, the next 5 weeks are going to be extremely entertaining, and I hope that this upward trend of viewership on NASCAR continues, because if they present this correctly and NBC explains this all correctly, this has drama written all over it, which is going to get the people hooked, and that's what I want to see for this sport.
Yep, I agree with you. I think the next 5 weeks could be some of the best entertainment we've seen in years in NASCAR, just from the playoff drama. And Daytona is going to be absolutely must-watch TV. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Daytona is going to be must-watch TV. It's going to be wild. And hopefully there's no rain that comes into play. Hopefully it's just a straight, 400-mile dogfight to see who wins that and who points their way in, who doesn't. Because I want some damn hard racing, not a rain wrecking out 80% of the field. I want to see some damn hard, crazy racing at Daytona to end the regular season.
Agreed, 100%. And like, as much as the Indy road course has been a shit show, I'm not a huge fan of Watkins Glen. That's just going to add the drama to it. 3 weeks out, we're at Indy road course, and literally anything can happen. And then Watkins Glen. That'll all come into strategy as well, what guys are going to do, and man, it's going to be fun. But this weekend we are at Richmond Raceway for the second time this year. Kyle Larson got the win the first time at Richmond. This will be the 4th race at this track under this new car, and I people wanting to preview Richmond, I didn't realize until I saw Ryan with Win the Race. He posted the tire fall off percentages, that Richmond is even higher than Darlington.
Yeah, it always depends. It always depends. Depends on the weather conditions, things like that. Also, in terms of like raw mile an hour, Darlington has a bigger fall off just because it's faster. So it depends on the metric you use. I do like to use a percent fall off, but when you start to get lower and lower and lower percentages, those percentages can look, in terms of miles an hour, those percentages can look inflated, because a 1 mile an hour fall off from 199 is 1%. A 1 mile an hour fall off from 200 to 199 is only 0.5%. But now do that with like 3, 4, 5, 6 miles an hour, and it starts like double. So it's It depends. And, like, look at Auto Club earlier this year. The weather was cold as shit. Kind of like last year, Martinsville. It didn't have the fall-off it normally has in other years. So I think we need to take, like, a multi-year aggregate for one thing. For another thing, the early in the run and late in the run that he uses, and I've used in the past, it's not a knock on his methodology at all. It's just NASCAR's the way they do that isn't always perfect. Sometimes there's negative fall off at high tire wear tracks that I've seen. It's just not a perfect way that they do it. So I think it's more of a look at the temperature, look at the age of the track, look at the location of the track, because tracks that go through a lot more temperature variation will experience a lot more wear. Just because of the harsh winters, warm summers, etc. So, like, Vegas isn't going to age as much or as quickly as Kansas, right? Like, Kansas and Vegas are very similar, but Kansas is 4 years younger in track surface age, but it has harsher winters, warmer summers, whereas Vegas is just kind of like very mild winters and hot summers. It doesn't have the same, like, cold, hot variation that Kansas has. So Kansas is actually, even though it's 4 years younger in surface age, is pretty much the same as Vegas in terms of, like, actual tire wear.
One thing that Richmond's tire wear, and by the way, it's supposed to be hot as shit in Richmond this weekend. I think it's supposed to be like 90s during the race. But this high tire wear, what it does is it brings into account more strategy plays, and we saw it happen earlier this year with the first race. Guys like Josh Berry, Michael McDowell, they gambled. They got a timely caution, and Berry finished second, McDowell finished sixth. They didn't have those good of cars. They got the track position late, and then were able to put on tires and win it. And we saw, last year, there were drivers that would try to take the strategy of one long run to end the race, or split it in twos with the new tires and hope you're fast enough to pass the guys that do it in one stop. So that's whole nother aspect of Richmond. That how do you handicap stuff like that? Can you handicap stuff like that? Because we know who's going to be quick here. We know the guys are going to be fast. Truex is going to be fast. Hamlin's going to be fast. Larson's going to be fast. Byron's going to be fast. Harvick's going to be fast. By the way, before we get into this, before I forget about it, like I said earlier, opening odds came out at Richmond. Ross Chastain, as much as I hate Ross Chastain, he opened at 25-1. I couldn't pass on that. That's one of those bets I could not pass on. He had one of the best cars here earlier this year. I understand he's in a slump right now, but if we've learned anything about Chastain, is typically when they're super fast somewhere, they're going to be super fast the next time too. And I know you think they're testing, just like Byron was last year. I don't know if I'm on that yet. It would certainly make sense, because their drop off in speed makes no sense. But here's the thing. Like I said, I hit Ross Chastain early, 25-1. I also have my eye on Harvick this week, which I always do at Richmond. Harvick always has a great long run car. Most books he's at 8-1, 9-1. Here is my. I know people like to bitch about this not being a betting podcast. Here's my betting advice for Kevin Harvick this week: is wait till after qualifying, because he has not been a good qualifier this year. The reason he qualified so well at Pocono last week was because they got that cloud cover. That's the only reason that he qualified as high as he did. He's not a good qualifier. When he qualifies 15th, 18th this weekend at Richmond, he's going to get up in that 12-1 range or longer. So my word of advice this week: wait until after qualifying if you're interested in betting Harvick. As much as I think he can win, but I'm not betting him at 9-1. Will I bet him after qualifying and after he looks great on the long run in practice and he's 12-1 or 14-1? Yes, I will. Probably. Maybe. I'm not going to guarantee anything there.
Yes, I will. Probably. Maybe. So here's the thing about Richmond. Strategy can come into play. But that's kind of the variance part of Richmond. But Richmond's otherwise incredibly predictable.
Yes.
I can fit a model. My current model that I have up on my screen has an R squared of around 0.65 at Richmond, and that's just using data from 2016 to present at Richmond. In terms of like the data I'm testing it against. Now, obviously, I'm using all the data for current form or similar track form, but like then just looking at Richmond races, I'm getting R squared around 0.65 just on non-DNF cars, right? So I'm not counting ones at DNF. I can get around 0.65, and that's really good. That's on one of the highest I can get on any track. And that's just the linear model. I haven't even done my non-linear model yet, which will I have. I'm just saying the one I have on screen is 0.65 with a linear model. My non-linear model gets around 0.697 R squared. Nice. So it's really, really good. It's really predictable. Fast cars, or even going into the race, without knowing starting position, without knowing practice, we know who's going to be good here. We do. Yep. And that lets us find early week value. There is some early week value this week, but before I get into that, now I just say my non-linear model is around 0.69 R squared. The incident rate at Richmond since 2016, and I believe removing 2019, which was the high downforce year. You remember that in the Gen 6 car, they had like a 1 year of high downforce, which was stupid. Yep. Like at Martinsville, Keselowski and Truex led over 400 laps in those two Martinsville races. It was terrible. But removing the high downforce year of 2019, from 2016 to present at Richmond, the incident rate, the major incident rate, so something that really sets you behind, not just like a speeding penalty or I went a lap down because of a pit issue or whatever, an actual major incident rate is only 6.9%. Nice. So we're going to have a clean race at Richmond. Like, we generally don't see chaos at Richmond, right? We just see cars making their laps and trying to conserve their tires, and it's a very low incident rate track, so it's very predictable. So if we find early week value, we should bet it. And that's to your point. Harvick is not early week value yet, and he will get better most likely after practice and qualifying, like you said. But the early week value I do have right now that both Jim Sonis of Number Fire, FanDuel, and I have is Brad Keselowski at 30-1. We both have him over 5.5% to win, which sounds crazy, but Brad is really good here. And you remember last year, Chris Buescher almost won this race, and Brad was running so well. Brad ran, again, really well earlier this year. Brad Keselowski at 30-1 is value. But the bet I really like, and that I hit hard, I can't track it in the Action app because for whatever reason we're not pulling in matchups at BetMGM yet, but Brad Keselowski minus 115 over Ty Gibbs. Both Jim and I have Brad at like more than a tier above Ty Gibbs. So like, you think about like fantasy football tiers, like there's like 3 or 4 drivers in your little group or NFL players in your little group of wide receivers or whatever, like tiers. Keselowski's more than a tier above Ty Gibbs for both of us. And they're both minus 115. So without the juice, they're saying it's a coin flip. Keselowski is I've already hit that one. I've already hit that one for 2 units. Keselowski absolutely favored to win here by quite a bit over Ty Gibbs in terms of that head-to-head matchup. Very high on Brad Keselowski this week. And here's the funny thing. Jim and I, we align a lot on our models. Very similar. Like I mentioned this past week, like Stenhouse and Jones, we were aligned. I should have done it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Joey Logano. Jim and I are 5% apart on Joey Logano. He's at like ballpark 4%. My model, and I don't choose the data, I don't choose the variables. The algorithm chooses it for me. There's like I said, a feature selection algorithm has determined that laps led at Richmond is very predictive of laps of finishing position at Richmond. Well, last year Joey Logano in this very race, the second Richmond race, led over 200 laps. But you go back even several races, last 8, 10, 12 races, and he's consistently leading 10% of the laps. So if he's consistently leading 10% of the laps, shouldn't it be not necessarily 10% to win, but pretty high? Well, you'd think so. So I know his short, flat track form hasn't been great this year, and the model takes that into account. It is one of the major factors. But he's also actually, despite not performing well at shorter flat tracks this year, hasn't finished terribly. He finished 11th at Phoenix. He finished 7th at Richmond earlier this year. 2nd at Martinsville. At Gateway, he finished 3rd. right? So
New Hampshire second.
Second at New Hampshire. He's 9%, just under, like 8.5, 8.6%, whatever it is. I don't remember the exact number. I don't have it in front of me. He's closer to 9% to win for me, and he's closer to 4% to win for Jim. Now, that's not a knock on Jim's model. It's not a knock on my model. My preference always, when you have two very sophisticated models and they come up to independent conclusions, is to average them, because wisdom of the crowds tends to be right. And that's the same thing with modeling. So averaging mine and Jim's, we get around 6.5%, let's say, for Joey Logano, which is right in line with the 14-1 that I see out there. I think at DraftKings has 14-1, Superbook is 14-1. I'm going to be very curious what Joey Logano looks like this weekend, because my model is pretty high on him. And I know those finishes, like I said, those finishes are more flattering than he actually ran. But at the same time, my model picks its own variables based off what's most predictive. And it's saying Joey Logano is undervalued. Now, Jim's saying Joey Logano is overvalued in the market. So we'll just have to see. It's not a competition. Jim and I always talk about these things because we love doing this. And we often find that just averaging our two models ends up being the best.
And Logano and Blaney are guys that we've talked about extensively with the short flat tracks this year, because they were off at Phoenix. Joey Logano was junk at Phoenix. And, you know, he's obviously coming off a championship win, which required the win at Phoenix. But here's the thing. Like you said, Gateway, he had a great car, finished third. New Hampshire, he had a really good car. Truex was just that dominant. But guess who had the second best driver rating in that race? Joey Logano, who finished second. So, yeah, I don't see myself betting him. I saw him at 14-1, 12-1, because it's such an unknown. But if he goes out there and he qualifies top 5, I could see Logano contending for this race.
I hope he qualifies 12th, but shows kick-ass speed in practice. That's what I want.
Yeah.
You know? And then we'll get probably still 14-1, but at least I know he'll have that practice speed, that long-run practice speed. So I'm going to have a keen eye on Joey Logano for practice and qualifying this weekend. Like you said, I'm not betting him right now at 14-1, because if you average mine and Jim's models, it's like pretty much fair value. But I do think he's a guy I really want to keep an eye on this weekend. So Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, a couple Fords there are some early interesting week, insights, values that I have. So that's where I'm standing right now as far as like bets.
You know what I'm interested in? I've suddenly become a big fan of top 10 bets. And
imagine that.
Yeah. I'm seeing Logano at minus 150. And I don't know, man. I'm really liking that. I go through these spells where I like certain bets. Like I think stage bets last year. I went through a phase of liking stage bets, and now I'm on my top 10 bets.
Because you're not betting Blaney at Martinsville.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wasn't it 2 weeks ago that Kevin Harvick was dead to you because he wasn't finishing top 10, and then he did? Yeah,
then he did. Maybe that's what I think. That's what I need to do. Is I need to threaten drivers that they're going to be dead to me during the race, and then they'll come back. Because Christopher Bell was dead to me, when he spun out at Pocono, and when he rebounded for that. Because I also bet Bell over Chastain head to head at Pocono.
Oh man, dude! Not only did I have Tyler Reddick 16-1 to win, I had him 6-1 top Toyota, and he finished second in both, right? Because Denny Hamlin won.
Right.
So frustrating.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Good bets just didn't work out.
Yeah. But as far as, Richmond itself goes, you mentioned Chris Buescher, third place here in this race last season. You have any interest in him? I think you can get him at 66-1. He might have been 100-1 somewhere. I remember tweeting Jim. Because he hit him at like 66, and I was like, you can get him for 100.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have interest in him to win, just because I think it's pretty low probability. And, I think Jim ended up – I messaged him too, obviously. I think he ended up being like – I think he actually tweeted it publicly. He was like – when he ran his model, he was like, oops. So, I think I like Chris Buescher here. I do. And the other issue is earlier this year at Richmond, Chris Buescher, it's not going to look like it's not going to be representative data because he wasn't running great. Don't get me wrong, he was running in the 20s, but he had an unscheduled pit stop about a third of the way through the race, and then all of a sudden, because he had a loose wheel or something, and then all of a sudden, for the last 2/3 of the race, he's running in the 30s, multiple laps down, just because of that. So he didn't run that well at Richmond earlier this year, but the data's also unflattering for him because of what happened. So I do want to mentally bump him up higher simply because of that, but at the same time, he's a guy I'm more looking at, maybe not even top Ford, but just like matchups, groups. If he's grouped with a bunch of drivers that are in the mid-pack range, I probably would like him. Or matchups, like I said, maybe a top 10 bet. So that's probably where I'm looking at with Chris Buescher this week, but I do like him here.
You mentioned how predictable Richmond is. Like, these short flat tracks, we know who's good. We know who's going to be fast. We know who's good. And that's why, yes, there's some value early week betting on here, but for the most part, books have this figured out. They know who's going to be fastest as well. Two guys actually, that everybody's just waiting for them to come around and have a good Richmond race. Ryan Blaney and Tyler Reddick. And we've talked about Ryan Blaney at Richmond a lot of times. He's never finished in the top 5, so I don't understand people that are suddenly betting him to win this race. The only time he's led a significant number of laps is when he won the pole last season.
Yep.
With how hard it is to pass with this car, if you win the pole and you have decent speed, you're probably going to lead quite a few laps. That does not mean Ryan Blaney's suddenly good at Richmond. He's not good here.
Guess how many laps he's led the last 2 races at Richmond? One. Exactly. A good race out of Ryan Blaney at Richmond is 7th. That's a good race out of him. If he gets a top 5, it's probably going to be on strategy. Same thing with Tyler Reddick. 0 top 10s here, ever. Now, while I'm sitting here saying this, will these guys eventually learn this track and, put together a good run? Yeah, I think eventually, we've seen Ryan Blaney get better. We saw Tyler Reddick show some speed earlier this year in the first race. I forget what happened to him to finish 16th, but he did finish 6th in the first stage. He qualified 5th. He had decent speed. But I'm not running to bet these guys when they have a 100% rate of being like shit compared to where they normally are. Like, we talk about guys that are really good at certain tracks. They have good track history. They know the track really well. Like, this stretch of races right now for Kevin Harvick is awesome. New Hampshire, Pocono, Richmond, Michigan. Amazing tracks for Kevin Harvick. This is the best 4-race streak of tracks that he could ask for him. The same goes the opposite way. Tyler Reddick's not good at Richmond. Ryan Blaney is not good at Richmond. So you have to keep that stuff into account. And until they, honestly, even if they put together one good run, I'm not going to be convinced. They're going to have to put a couple good runs for me to finally believe that they figured this place out. And I'm not seeing it right now. So that's kind of my mini rant within this, Richmond preview is, let's stop getting hyped up. Let's hyped up about situations that happened without fully looking at situations that or what required or allowed that situation to happen, specifically talking about Blaney and being so fast here a year ago. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It's not reasonable to assume they will suddenly be good here. If you look at Tyler Reddick, 0 laps led in his career at Richmond. Earlier this year, now, of course, a lot of that was RCR, but earlier this year, qualified 5th, but then just went backward. Finished on the lead lap, but, only ran a third of the race inside the top 15. So it was just not a very good race for him. Driver rating of 75.7. That's not good when, max is 150. And no laps led, like I said. Even in fastest lap, Tyler Reddick is a guy that puts down fastest laps a lot. He only has 28 career fastest laps at Richmond. Now let's look at Ryan Blaney. I mean, we mentioned 1 lap led in the last 2 races. Well, aside from, like you said, the pole winning year, He's led one lap in his career.
Yeah.
He led 128 laps the year he won the pole, which, held the track position, whatever. But aside from that, he has led one lap out of a possible, doing the math here, 5,213 laps. One. He's
Amazing.
led one. That's not good.
No.
So, never finished in the top 5. Like you said, best career finish of 7th. That was the year he won the pole. Only one other top 10. That was this race last year. That was a 10th place finish. So, it's kind of like I say with Martinsville. To first win at Martinsville, you need to be good at Martinsville. That especially applies to guys like Tyler Reddick, who weren't great at Martinsville. It used to be Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson eventually became good at Martinsville and then finally won at Martinsville, I think it was. But it's one of those things where Blaney's not good at Richmond. Tyler Reddick is not good at Richmond. And I lied. There was another top 10 Blaney had, but it was, again, a 10th place finish. It was in the spring race of 2021. So back-to-back top 10s in the spring race, or I don't want to call it the playoff race, but the second Richmond race of the year, 2021-2022. He's had exactly 10th place finishes. So, I don't know. I can't get behind these guys at their current prices at all.
A couple other long shots, or guys that, I guess, going the other way, guys that are decently good at Richmond. One, Austin Dillon. For some reason, he's typically always very good here. Earlier this year, he finished 25th after starting 27th. Not sure. I don't remember if that was any issues, but typically, 11th or better in 3 of the last 5 here, 16th or better in 7 of the last 9. Like, for some reason, Austin Dillon always runs really well at Richmond. And then a guy like Eric Almirola, who's always a long shot at these short, flat tracks. We know this is where Stuart Haas is going to actually have speed. Remember that for guys like Chase Briscoe with DFS this week. Chase Briscoe is now on the table again. We're not in the intermediate package. He's going to have speed no matter where he qualifies this week. And even Ryan Preece, as much as I hate him, he's probably going to have decent speed. But is someone like Eric Almirola, he's sitting out there right now at 66-1. Is he someone that you could see spoiling the party and grabbing a win? Because while he hasn't shown race-winning speed this year, we've seen him steal a win at New Hampshire before. I think it was last year or the year before.
It was 2021 when he got the New Hampshire win. But so for me, again, no on Eric Almirola.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when I said Ryan Blaney's led one lap in his career outside of the year he started on pole? Eric Almirola's led one lap ever at Richmond.
Yes.
So no. And his best finish is 4th over a 22 race sample size. Now that was with Richard Petty Motorsports. He was a 5th with Stuart Haas Racing. But he's just kind of a guy, I think he's just going to be between 5th and 15th, right? For Richmond. It just seems like that's where he falls at Richmond. Richmond isn't as good a track for him as New Hampshire has been. It's just a fact of the matter. New Hampshire is his best track. Richmond's good. Phoenix is good. Martinsville's okay, at these shorter, flatter tracks. But New Hampshire is his bread and butter. He's easily run the best there of all the short, flat tracks. So I'm not getting behind him. My model doesn't have value on him at 66-1 or whatever it is. 51 is what I see longest right now on the Action Network Bet Center, presented by BetMGM. But he's led one lap ever at Richmond. So no, I'm not gonna back Eric Almirola to win at Richmond at all.
One guy who has plenty of experience leading here is Martin Truex Jr. He's led 100 or more laps in 7 of the last 13 races here. 50 or more laps in 10 of the last 13. With how that team's running right now, I don't see, and I'm pretty sure every sportsbook has him as the favorite, I don't see how Truex is not the odds-on favorite heading into this week. With that being said, sitting there at 5-1 at most books, no interest in betting him either. it's too short. Same as Kevin Harvick. But the problem is I don't see Truex getting longer. He qualified 12th here earlier this year, but I think even if he qualifies 12th and he looks good in practice, they're not gonna go much longer than 5, because they know how good he is at this racetrack and how good they're running right now. That team is absolutely on fire as of late.
Yeah, and Truex is a clear number 1 in my waddle. It's Truex 1, Denny Hamlin 2, and then I think it's Byron and Larson in some order. I think it's Larson Byron probably as 3 and 4. I don't have it immediately in front of me. No, Byron's actually much further down. So yes, Truex 1, Hamlin 2, Larson 3, Logano 4th because of that close to 9%, and then Byron, Bell, Kyle Busch, and then Keselowski, Harvick, right neck and neck with each other at 5.8%. Both are 5.8, 5.9, whatever it is percent. So not really separating Keselowski or Harvick in terms of win probability. And I might be a little unflattering to Harvick that he's at 5.9%, but those JGR cars, especially Truex, Hamlin, Christopher Bell, obviously Byron and Larson. My model loves Joey Logano, like I said, and I don't think you can argue with Kyle Busch. What was that stat I saw? Kyle Busch has completed all but 1 lap at Richmond in his career.
Ever.
That's bonkers.
Ever.
That's bonkers. That's insane. It's like over 10,000 laps. He's only not completed 1. The dude is damn good here. So, honestly, my model makes a lot of sense. Yeah, my model makes a lot of sense. I trust it, aside from maybe the Logano thing, but I still trust it. There's a reason it's the model, is because it picks its own variables and then builds its own prediction, because that's how machine learning works. It is the data does the talking. I'm not doing it. I'm not choosing it. I'm not picking it. It's just what is most predictive according to the data. So I trust the model, and it's it likes Kevin Harvick, but it's really high on Logano, and Truex is a very clear number 1 in my model. Very clear number 1.
Obviously Christopher Bell really excels at these short flat tracks. I didn't realize, last 5 races here. So he ran his first race here with Levine Family Racing. He finished 15th. Since joining Joe Gibbs Racing, he has yet to finish worse than 6th at this racetrack. So something like that, with how Joe Gibbs Racing is running, with how good Christopher Bell is at this racetrack, definitely one of those guys to keep an eye on if you can get a good number on top 5, top 10 odds. Again, I'm obsessed with top 10 odds right now.
He has led, if you take away Blaney's pole race, if you combine Ryan Blaney and Eric Almirola's career laps led, that's 2. Christopher Bell has led 50 times that number, almost 50 times, 49 and a half times that much at 99 laps led in just his 5 races with Joe Gibbs Racing at Richmond. If that says anything, Christopher Bell is 8-1 at BetMGM right now. Ryan Blaney, you can get as long as 22-1 at DraftKings. I'd rather have the 49 and a half times, versus Blaney, 99 times more laps led in a smaller race sample size than Blaney has had. So if we normalize it to number of laps, we're probably talking multiple 100 times more laps led than Blaney in terms of rate. I'd much rather have Bell at 8 than Blaney at 22. Don't get me wrong, I'm not betting either, because my model's not showing value in either. But if I had to pick one, I'd pick Bell at 8 versus Blaney at 22.
100%. I cannot. Nobody can say anything to get me on the Blaney train this week. At all. Just
or the Almirola train for me.
Yeah. So looking at career wins here, Kyle Busch leads the way with 6. Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin both have 4. Truex has 3. Keselowski and Larson have 2, as does Logano, and then Alex Bowman has a win. Do you think there's a chance we see a first-time Richmond winner this weekend?
No. Well, I mean,
No.
Does Christopher Bell count as a first-time Richmond winner? Because he's never won at Richmond.
He's never won here.
Then yes, I do. I think there's a chance.
There's also Byron.
Chastain.
Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott's never won at
this
Richmond.
race.
Oh, then there's a very good chance. I mean, not because of Elliott, just in general. I thought you meant a first-time winner this weekend, just like for not for the season, but like a new first-time winner. But then once you said at Richmond, I was like, oh, no, we're good. Yeah, there's a good chance, actually. There's not a great chance, but there's a decent chance.
Do you think it comes from any of those guys that I just mentioned? You know, the Byrons, the Blaneys, Chastain, Bell, Elliott. You know, is it?
It would be one of those five, guaranteed.
Bubba Wallace?
No, not gonna be Bubba.
Nope.
Neither Bubba nor Almirola are good enough here. They're good here, but they're not good enough here. You know what I mean? Same with Tyler Reddick. Not good enough here. Ryan Blaney, not good enough here. It's going to come from those five that you mentioned. Elliott, Chastain, Byron, Bell. Or maybe it was just those four. Yeah, it's going to come from one of those four most likely.
Elliott, Chastain, Byron, Bell. Suarez, maybe? No.
Yeah. Suarez is terrible here. Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe is almost interesting. Or Austin Dillon or Ricky Stenhouse. Like, those are guys that are interesting for like a top 10 finish.
Yeah, Stenhouse, like I said, he had 500. It was 500 to 1. I remember how fast he was in this spring race, and I'm like, that is worth $1 or $2 bet, just for fun. I don't think there's a chance, a realistic chance that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. wins this race, but to have a long shot like that is just,
I don't have a problem with that at 500 to 1 at all. Don't have a problem with that at all at 500 to 1. My model has him at, dude, it's the week. It's the week, man. 0.69% to win. Okay, so I did a show today. It's called the Favorites Podcast from Action Network. It's like one of our flagship NFL betting, typically NFL betting podcasts, but they dive into other stuff too. Well, today I was on it talking about the luck rankings that I did, and I found a split of the luck rankings that I've made, where over the last 5 years, if a game meets at least one of these criteria, a 50% gap in luck, like a percentage gap, or if you just rank all the teams 1 to 32, there's a 24 or larger difference in the ranking. So at least a 50% luck gap in terms of percentage luck, or 24 absolute difference in the ranking, and the unlucky team is on the road over a 69 game sample size. Nice. That team, the unlucky team, is 50-19 against the closing spread for a 72.5% win rate. 72.5% win rate at minus 110 odds, right? Like, typically spreads in the NFL are minus 110 on both sides, unless you're betting at really shitty books. But 69 game sample size is not nothing. A 72.5% win rate. I just thought today is the day of 69, apparently.
It is.
It's come up a bunch of times. By the way, Alex Bowman, 69 stage points this year. So, just was looking at Wikipedia and saw that as well. So, it's the 6.9, the 0.69, the 69 day today.
Apparently.
By the way, Kyle Kirkwood, remember, he's the only driver this year in any series, all three top NASCAR series and IndyCar, to complete the 69 challenge. Well, again, he completed the 7-11 challenge, so he's literally just the best. He's completed the 69 and the 7-11 challenge. Finished 7th and then 11th. But I do believe, let me check out the 2023 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. I don't think we've had a 69. By the way, shout outs to Malazzi, right?
24th.
24th.
And he looked missing that wreck.
Drove through that wreck. Yeah.
That was awesome to watch.
Yeah. So big shout outs to him. Obviously, we sponsored him earlier this year, and it was super awesome to see him, get his second best career finish, not lose a battery for once. His other two races this year, he lost a battery at some point in the race. I take it back. There is, since the Kyle Kirkwood 69 challenge, one other driver has completed the 69 challenge. It's the Xfinity Series. You have two guesses.
Brandon Jones.
No.
Daniel Hammer.
Nope. Mr. Cold Custard.
Damn it! That was gonna be my next one. That was gonna be my next guess.
6th at Sonoma, 9th at Nashville. So congratulations to Cold Custard on becoming the first NASCAR driver this year to complete the 69 challenge.
By the way, switching gears back, speaking of drivers driving a Ford, I found Logano top 10 minus 135, and I need to put the phone down because I'm going to end up fucking hammering that.
You need to do that. You definitely need to do that. Is it at the single game parlay book?
Yeah. The one that just promotes everything awful.
Yeah. Oh my god.
All the time.
Yeah.
They
I saw
have the
that. I saw those
10
tweets.
odds,
I was
though.
like, no, they good odds are good odds, but they're literally trying to mislead people into making bad bets because they know it's good for their bottom line.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah, I find that kind of sleazy.
I wish more people understood that you can't trust these sports books because I feel like we're going to get some kind of law or something that prevents them. Like you constantly see now, oh, this is the most popular bet from people today. What does that have to do with anything? You're just trying to herd the masses into putting money on, like, I don't know, or this is the most popular bet in your state. Guess what? It's on the state team. Like for me, I always get Reds money line is the best bet today in Ohio. Like, of course it is.
By the way, speaking of, remember a couple weeks ago we had Newman as like the biggest liability at one point in the week for BetMGM?
Yeah.
Well, if we look at top 10 odds for Ryan Newman, 16-1 at Caesars, that's fine. If we look at top 5 odds, I saw a really weird one earlier. I'm trying to figure out which one it is. I'm trying to scroll through here. Oh, 90-1 for a top 5 at some books, and 12-1 for a top 5 at DraftKings. Has he been hit again? Has he been pummeled again? 200-1 for a top 3 versus 25-1 for a top 3 at DraftKings. What is going on? Why is Ryan Newman so short at DraftKings? Is it DraftKings being dumb, or did he get bet down at DraftKings again?
I think he opened at that at DraftKings, if I remember right, because, he's shorter on everything than Austin Dillon and Stenhouse. And, like, oh, man.
100-1 to win at DraftKings. 1,500-1 to win at BetMGM. Like, why is DraftKings opening him that short? That's just, because he got bet down so hard 2 weeks ago for New Hampshire. It makes no sense. Please do not bet on Ryan Newman, even at 1,500-1.
I wouldn't bet on Ryan Newman to win at 1,000,000-1. Like, no. He's not going to win this race. Give me those kind of odds on him to finish on the lead lap, and I probably still wouldn't bet him. Like,
yeah, no, not at a predictable track like Richmond.
Yeah, in an absolute shitbox of a car, but
and he's old as shit too, and it's just not very good. Let me pull up what my model has on Ryan Newman because I'm very curious. So it's 0.00000 1 2 3 4 5 6 4 3 4 3 3 3. So that's 1 2 3 4 5. Yeah, 10 to the minus 6. So let me do 1 divided by that. 155,415-1 for Ryan Newman to win this race, according to my model. I still wouldn't touch it.
Wow. Still wouldn't touch it. Yeah. Man. Speaking of what you would touch, though, that sounded a little weird, but
that sounds very weird.
Picks to win. Hey, I got my 3rd win of the season last week, picking Hamlin at Pocono.
I know. I only have one so far.
You have 2. You have 2, so it's your turn to pick the winner. Who you got for Richmond?
You know I hate picking chalk on these. I don't pick chalk on these.
I know.
So I am going to go with... We're going to do it.
Martin Truex Jr.
We're going to do it. Yeah, I know. Truex is a very heavy favorite on my model. I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr.
Oh, here we go.
I was debating between Joey Logano and just trusting my model on him or Martin Truex Jr. I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. I'm going to cop out. If Joey Logano wins, I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to have to bet Joey Logano just because I'm going to be pissed if he wins.
I'm going to go. Give me a Kyle Larson win after the drama. Just absolute slay the field kind of race.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Like he's gonna come in. He's gonna come into Richmond pissed off. He won here last time. And you know, as far as this tire code, they're using the same tires that they used at North Wilkesboro, which he dominated at. Give me Larson this week. He's won outright that I'm actually thinking about betting pre-practice. Doubt I do, just because I don't like betting outrights before practice. Right now, like I said, I'm on a top 10 thing and live betting. I love live betting.
How about this? I will do 10/11ths of my pick, Martin Truex Jr., and 1/11th of my pick, Joey Logano. So if I get a win with Truex, I only get 10/11ths of a win. And if Joey Logano wins, I get 1/11th of a win.
Okay. I'll make that note here. Make another column in my spreadsheet.
Because my Logano has Joey Logano winning 1 out of 11.
Okay. It's noted. Your official pick is Truex, but 1/11th is Logano.
Yeah.
So if Logano wins, you get 1/11th of a win.
And if Truex wins, I get 10/11ths.
Yeah. All right.
So I'll still be behind you in wins, even if Truex wins.
I have a little streak going. So the last 5 picks to win I've made have all finished top 5. So probably just jinxed it for Mr. Larson. He's gonna blow an engine on lap 2. But
there you go. Or he's gonna try to get revenge and Denny Hamlin and wreck himself.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We've seen that before.
Yeah, Richmond this weekend should be a very good race. I always like Richmond. Like I don't like it. We've talked about this before. I don't like it from a fantasy perspective because I seem to always have bad luck here. But I like watching it, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And hopefully my bets hit as well. Hopefully you get some winning bets this weekend, Nick, and hopefully anybody that listened to this learned a few things and can find some value out there with Richmond this weekend. As always, follow us on Twitter. Nick is at RotoDoc. I am at Fan Racing Online. Follow us on the Action app. All of our bets are tracked that we make. And yeah, let's make some money, guys. Let's go or continue this summer with a bang. You know, I feel like both you and I are hitting our grooves now. I know I am for sure. I'm sure you feel the same way. You know,
yeah. Even though we had that 2 weeks of, for me, really really bad results, I was, other than the week I was traveling, I felt great with my process. And the 5 weeks prior to that was a fucking heater. So we're hitting our groove. I'm ready for Richmond. I feel confident about it. I haven't made any bets yet other than Keselowski over Ty Gibbs, but I feel very confident about that bet. Very confident.
Yeah. One thing here before we fully sign off, we have to check FanDuel Sportsbook to see if they're up yet.
I looked earlier. I refreshed maybe about half an hour ago. There's nothing.
Nothing. They're taking their sweet ass time. Damn.
Yeah. Bastards.
Yeah.
By the way, shout outs to BetMGM. The featured matchups this week. Helmet throw. We didn't even talk about this. Helmet throw Austin Dillon versus Tyler Reddick in a matchup. And Corey LaJoie versus Ryan Preece in a matchup.
Really?
Those are some damn good matchups. And they have Hamlin-Larson matchup. Like, these are some good matchups they got. They're playing into the controversy. I love it. But we literally didn't even talk about Austin Dillon's helmet throw.
Because it was that bad.
It was no Tony Stewart versus Matt Kenseth helmet throw, and it was no Robbie Gordon versus Michael Waltrip helmet throw. I think it was the third career helmet throw I've seen at a car, maybe. But yeah, it was pathetic.
Just like him. And to be pissed off, like, I don't know if he watched that replay. Yeah, I don't know if he watched that replay or not. And Childress was standing up for him. That was 100% on Austin Dillon. And I'm glad to see, from all the commentary that I saw on Twitter, nobody is on Austin Dillon's side here. Like, finally.
Dale Jr. wasn't on Austin Dillon's side, and he was like, well, I guess Dale Jr. said something about it. I came down on him. But I would. He's still making excuses for himself, even after Dale Jr.'s like, nah, you wrecked yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great way to earn fans, is to go against Dale Jr., you idiot.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Finally, I think, more fans are realizing that Austin Dillon is just off. Like, he sucks. He's so bad. I
love these. I love these rivalry matchups, though, on BetMGM.
I'm trying to find them. I have a hard time navigating their app sometimes.
I'm just on web right now because it's easier half the time. Like you said, because of the app being a pain in the ass. But just on
Every
web.
time
So
I
right
go-
now, Tyler Reddick is minus 300 versus Austin Dillon. That says, actually, Austin Dillon is...
actually don't
Holy
hate
shit,
that.
let's
I
bet
don't
Austin
hate
Dillon
that.
220. Oh, my God. Okay. I'm betting Austin Dillon plus 220. I know there's a lot of juice there, but... Oh, my God. Okay. Yeah, I'm betting that. We didn't even think about that. Like, Austin Dillon's actually good here. Fuck. All right. Well, there it is. Austin Dillon plus 220 for a unit for me at BetMGM.
Ooh. Yeah, plus 220. Hamlin Larson, that's probably right. Priest minus 200 over LaJoy. I like betting LaJoy there too, I think.
I
Probably
need to look.
Probably because my hatred of Priest is so high.
Yeah, now I need to look. I mean, because, Priest is good at this track type, generally speaking.
LaJoy finished
Poor
21st
LaJoy.
here earlier this year, started 16th. We know Priest ain't going to qualify worth a shit. That was LaJoy's best ever finish at Richmond.
All right, so I've got LaJoy versus Priest up on my dashboard here. So yeah, Priest finished 18th earlier this year. LaJoy finished 21st, and driver rating was very heavily weighted towards Ryan Priest. Ryan Priest actually ran inside the top 15 for 76.8% of the laps earlier this year. So probably gonna avoid that one for me. I haven't completely run model sims on that specific matchup, but if I look at just win probability, I've got Priest about a order of magnitude ahead of Corey LaJoy in terms of win probability.
Yeah, looking at Gateway as well. LaJoy also finished 21st there. Priest finished 17th, so very similar story. Although the gap in driver rating wasn't as big at that race, but yeah, that's to me that's an entertainment bet. I'm going to bet LaJoy, and I'm just going to hope Priest has something happen to him and he throws.
Not a
another
value
fit
bet, an entertainment bet. Making that very clear because I made that entertainment bet on Kyle Kirkwood, Colton Herta, 1-2 finish in any order for I think it was whatever the fuck race it was. What race did they just go to where it, like, things got crazy? Now I have to look it up. The hell track was that? Oh, Toronto. Street race in Toronto. And they pulled a strategy move where Kyle came out of the pits first, Colton second, and had the race stayed green until the end. Everybody else would have had a pit, and they wouldn't have. And they would have finished 1-2, and I got them like 75-1 1-2, and then 75 to 1, 2-1. You know what I mean? So like, because the Quinella where it's 1-2 any order was 30 to 1, so I was like, well, why not just take 75 to 1 on 1-2 and 2-1?
Yeah,
because that's better odds. So yeah, I just thought that was funny, but that was an entertainment bet, and I bet it. I was like, I bet this is 75 to 1. I moved it at Caesars to 50 to 1. And I was like, this is an entertainment bet. It is not recommended. I tweeted this out. And then it still got bet down from 50 all the way to 20. I'm like, what are you people doing? I'm not recommending this. Like, I'm making an entertainment bet. I'm telling you this is a minus EV bet, although I don't think it's actually that minus EV because I thought there was a lot of reason for it to be correlated. A, they were the 2 fastest cars in practice all week, and B, they're teammates. So you'd think their performance would be correlated just by the fact that they run similar setups, etc. So I didn't think it was a terribly minus EV bet, but I was like, this is not a recommended bet, and people kept betting it down to 20 to 1. So if you're listening to Jordan here, Jordan is making an entertainment bet.
Yes, so if and when Ryan Preece hits the wall or has mechanical issues on Sunday, I can cheer because I'm also probably going to win a bet. So that's the only reason I'm betting this, because of my hatred toward Ryan Preece. But
exactly.
Yeah.
Love that Austin Dillon bet, though. I'm glad I took that.
That's solid. I like that. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up here for this Richmond preview. Good luck to everybody fantasy betting wise, and we'll be back next week to talk about Michigan. And we'll also be talking about, if you guys listened to the show last year, we set a betting line for the number of beers that I would drink during my town's picnic. That's coming up next weekend as well, so we'll have to set that line. Last year was 84. I hit the over. Regrettably, that was so dumb, but I did hit the over. We'll have to see where this line is this year, because that was rough doing that last year. But
well, we got to hit the over.
There we go.
On 4.5.
Another Tecate opened tonight.
Well, actually, no, technically 3.5. I have one sitting here that I cracked pre-show. So we hit the over on 3.5. But yeah, another Tecate cracked for my enjoyment after the show.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.